our Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Zahra Syed. Our top story tonight: an Israeli airstrike on a United Nations school in southern Gaza housing displaced families has killed 33 people, mainly children and women. Gaza's education system is suffering from the damage, with 282 schools affected, of which 100 have been destroyed since October 7th. Earlier on Tuesday, Israeli forces destroyed a UN school in Beit Hanun, claiming it was a Hamas outpost. Meanwhile, 2 Al Jazeera journalists were injured in Khan Yunis. While El Dahdu, who lost most of his family members to Israeli bombardments, and his colleagues survived a missile strike while reporting on the aftermath of the attacks on the UN school. According to health authorities, hospitals in Deir el-Balah, Khan Yunis, and Rafah reported further casualties following the early morning attacks. Israel's defense minister has called for an expanded military operations against Hamas. Tensions also escalated in occupied East Jerusalem, where a photojournalist was injured. Israel announced the death of 1 more soldier, raising the toll of soldiers killed to 450. It also claimed to have recovered the bodies of 3 prisoners from Gaza. A high-level meeting was held between the head of the Israeli Secret Service and the United States National Security Advisor. At least 3,714 Palestinian students have been killed in Israeli attacks in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank since October 7th. According to the Palestinian Ministry of Education, 3,679 students were killed and 5,429 others injured in the Gaza Strip, while 35 students lost their lives and 271 others were injured in the West Bank. Israeli forces have also detained 82 Palestinian students in the West Bank. The ministry says 209 teachers and administrators were killed and 619 others injured in the Gaza Strip, while 2 more were wounded and 65 arrested in the West Bank. Israeli forces have also bombed 278 government schools and 65 UN-run schools in the Gaza Strip. A Palestinian civilian detailed his harrowing experience at the hands of Israeli forces in Gaza. The man, known by the mononym Hakim, alleged he was bound, strapped with explosives, and sent into a suspected Hamas tunnel by Israeli soldiers. They used him as a human shield in their search for Hamas fighters underground, he said. Hakim said a soldier told him he was being sent to meet his end with a belt of explosives and a GoPro camera strapped to his head. The explosives were tied to him to potentially detonate the tunnel if the fighters were found. Hakim survived, as the tunnels were empty. According to him, a 15-year-old boy endured a similar ordeal but survived. The Israeli army is preventing ambulances from reaching hospitals in the Palestinian city of Jenin, where a large-scale operation has been underway for 3 days. The ongoing raid in the West Bank has resulted in at least 12 deaths and left dozens wounded. Since Tuesday, the Israeli military has imposed a blockade around hospitals in the city. It effectively has halted all movement in and out of these vital healthcare facilities. The situation has exacerbated the already precarious conditions for residents and injured people in the area. On Thursday, a 17-year-old boy, Musa Khatib, was shot and killed by soldiers within the Khalil Suleiman Hospital compound, Doctors Without Borders, MSF, reported. The MSF has documented instances where Israeli forces have obstructed ambulances waiting outside hospitals from transporting discharged patients home. Paramedics and ambulance drivers forcibly were removed from their vehicles, subjected to humiliating searches, and compelled to kneel in the street. Patients were left stranded in the ambulance, making matters worse. The United Nations reports about half the population in Gaza is facing severe food shortages and uncertainty over their next meal. Carl Scow, deputy chief of the United Nations World Food Program, expressed deep concern, saying half of Gaza's population is starving, with 9 out of 10 people not getting enough to eat daily. Fear, confusion, overcrowded shelters, and a breakdown in law and order are now evident as Palestinians in Gaza struggle to secure food. The escalating crisis demands urgent international attention and action, United Nations leaders say. Philippe Lazzarini, the Commissioner General of the United Nations Refugee Agency, or the UNRWA, also described the people of Gaza as desperate, hungry, and terrified. He said people have never experienced such hunger before. They're resorting to taking food directly from trucks in sheer despair. United Nations officials warned the humanitarian crisis is worsening rapidly, with only a significant increase in aid preventing further suffering. The UNRWA chief called for the reopening of the Kerem Shalom crossing from Israel for commercial vehicles and an end to the Gaza siege. U.S. intelligence reveals Israel dropping unguided bombs on Gaza. Details come after the break. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. According to the United States intelligence, some 40 to 45% of the bombs dropped by Israel on the Gaza Strip in the last 2 months are unguided or dumb bombs. This assessment by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence raises concerns about civilian casualties. The inaccuracy of these bombs is contributing to the soaring death toll, with women and children particularly affected. American media, citing sources, reports that the Israeli military may have used M117 bombs attached to aircraft. The M117 is a 750-pound general-purpose bomb that dates to the Korean War and was used extensively in the Vietnam War and the First Iraq War. It is unclear which variants Israel has in its arsenal. Israel claims it has carried out over 22,000 air attacks so far during the war. Indiscriminate bombing is widely regarded as a war crime and a violation of the Geneva Conventions. Dozens of Jewish activists disrupted Los Angeles rush hour traffic, staging a protest demanding an end to Israeli military aggression in Gaza. Organized by If Not Now, an American Jewish group opposing support for Israeli policies, demonstrators sat on the highway, causing a major traffic jam. They wore black shirts with slogans like "Not in our name" and chanted "Ceasefire now" while placing a large menorah on the road. The protesters voiced their concerns over civilian casualties in Gaza. The police eventually reopened the road about an hour into the demonstration. Young people in Kenya are increasingly boycotting Israeli brands as the war in Gaza takes a mounting humanitarian toll. Advocacy groups like Kenyans for Palestine are leading the charge, organizing events like Palestinian film screenings and creating infographics to identify brands to avoid. They are also pressuring the Kenyan grocery delivery platform Green Spoon to remove Israeli-owned products from their offerings. Efforts extend to educating friends and family on the nuances of the conflict. However, the boycott faces hurdles as Israeli-owned businesses have a significant presence in Kenya's capital. Well-known establishments like Art Cafe and Westgate Mall are Israeli-owned, alongside less recognized but influential companies like Amira in Kenya. These businesses have become deeply ingrained in the Kenyan society, with many unaware of their Israeli ownership. Germany's Heinrich Böll Foundation is under scrutiny for its decision to withdraw from an awards ceremony honoring author Masha Jenin. Jenin has criticized Israel's aggression in Gaza. The foundation opted out of the Hannah Arendt Awards ceremony, an event it had co-sponsored for years. This decision followed criticism from Israeli lobbying groups over Jenin's remark, likening Gaza to a Jewish ghetto under Nazi occupation in Eastern Europe. The Friday event was cancelled, with a scaled-down award ceremony and symposium for Jenin set for Saturday. Critics, including Samantha Rose Hill and Sean Curry, lambasted the foundation's decision, accusing it of bowing to Germany's restrictive policies on Israel criticism. They argued that the move contradicts the legacy of Hannah Arendt, a Jewish German who fled the Nazis and championed the right to freedom for all. The Senate has approved an $886 billion military policy bill. It includes an extension of surveillance authority, Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or the FISA. This extension allows the government to access communications of individuals without requiring a warrant. Despite concerns from civil liberties groups and some members of Congress, 65 senators, including 31 Democrats, voted to keep the extension within the National Defense Authorization Act. That leads to an 87-13 approval. Critics argue that Section 702 has been misused, allowing authorities to gather the communications of United States citizens unrelated to foreign spying efforts. The extension, initially set for 4 months, could effectively become a 16-month extension, as the government seeks approval from the FISA court. Now the proposal moves to the House of Representatives, where the Congressional Progressive Caucus leadership is urging its 100-plus members to vote against the NDAA. It is citing excessive defense spending and a violation of constitutional privacy rights. Advocacy groups noted in a letter to congressional leaders last month the FBI has used Section 702 authority to gain warrantless access to the communications of racial justice activists, 19,000 donors to a congressional campaign, journalists, and members of the U.S. Congress. A Georgia middle school teacher was arrested on December 8th after allegedly threatening to behead a Muslim student. Benjamin Reese is facing charges of making terroristic threats and cruelty to children. Over 20 witnesses corroborated the incident, in which the 13-year-old student told Reese they found the Israeli flag in his classroom offensive. Witnesses heard Reese shouting threats at the students, and school surveillance video confirmed Reese followed the students in the hallway. Reese initially denied the accusations. However, he later invoked his civil rights during questioning. The Houston County School District says Reese has not been on campus since December 7th. Pakistan has granted a 2-month extension to tens of thousands of Afghans who are waiting to be resettled in third countries. Information Minister Murtaza Solangi said this extension until February 29th should encourage illegal Afghan residents in Pakistan to obtain legal documentation or finalize evacuation agreements with third countries promptly. Those who miss the new deadline will be fined monthly, with the amount being capped at $800. This follows discussions between the U.S. Special Representative for Afghanistan, Thomas West, and Pakistani officials. These emphasize the need to protect Afghan refugees. That's all from our Toronto studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon for the latest updates. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.